Okay, in this video, we're going to learn about compound interest. Okay, so when interest is paid monthly, the interest earned after the first month becomes part of the new principal for the second month, and so on. When something like that occurs, that interest is known as compounding interest. And there's a specific formula that we use in math to calculate compound interest. So you might want to jot this one down in your notes. So P, this P out here, that's our principal. Okay, that's the initial amount that you invest. R is your rate, and that is based on the annual interest rate, and we would write it as a decimal. So if you had like 7%, we would write that as 0.07. So we always move that over 2 spaces. If I had 12%, again, if I move it over 2 spaces, it would just be 0.12. Sometimes they're really funny, like if you had 1.05% and we move that over 2, it'd be 0.0105. So just always move it over 2 spaces, and then you just get what you get at that point. N is the number of compounding time periods, and we're going to talk about what all the different options are. Like you could have like weekly, monthly, daily, yearly, things like that. And then A is your value of your account after so many years. Okay, so T is always going to be in years when we're using the compound interest formula. So let's take a look at some of those values for N. So if you are doing yearly or annually, that N value would be 1. That means 1 time a year. Semi-annually, I would use an N value of 2. That would mean 2 times a year. Quarterly happens to be 4 times a year. Monthly would be 12 times a year. Weekly, there's 52 weeks in a year, and daily would be 365. I know banks just generally go by 365. I know sometimes we have a leap year and things like that, but for our purposes, you can go ahead and use 365. So let's take a look at how we would set up an example. So this problem here, Jolie invests $3,000 at 7% compounded quarterly. How much will be in her account after 10 years? So we have our formula. Okay, we want to know the amount, so we don't know the amount, but the principal is how much she initially started with. So she had $3,000 to start with. That's her principal. And again, we see that one. That one is standing, she's taking 100% of her money, and then we're going to add an extra percentage to it. Okay, so her rate on her account is going to be 0.07. So remember that 7%, we go 1, 2. So we'd have to add that 0. Now, N is the number of times it's compounding, and you can see that here, compounded quarterly. So I would use the number 4, and then 4 also goes up on top. And then the time that we're going to do this for is 10 years. Okay, so you can put this into Desmos or a calculator, any kind of scientific calculator. You should just be able to put that whole sentence in your calculator in one step. So you might want to practice that, but you should be getting out $6,000 or $6,004. Sorry, couldn't get that one out. And 79 cents. So that's what we're looking at here with compounding interest. So basically, once you know the formula, you just substitute in all your values, you type it in a calculator, and you get your solution. So let's look at a couple of these. So let's say Sam's rich uncle leaves her $20,000 in his will, and she has a couple ways here to invest. So we're going to calculate some investments just to see some different options and think about which one you think is the best option. So in the first case, well, actually in every case, we have $20,000. Okay, so we know we're going to start with $20,000, and this time our rate is 4.2%. So we're going to move that over 2 spaces. So 1, 2. Semi-annually, that means 2 times a year she's going to earn interest, and she's going to do that for 10 years. So once you get it set up, you type it all into your calculator, and you should get about $30,000. So 30,307.13. So it is money. You can have change on money. So again, I would practice putting that in your calculator, or if you're using a Desmos calculator, whatever you're using, make sure you understand how to type that in. Okay, so that one was a CD, which is a certificate of deposit. Okay, so she's got a $30,000 is how much she would have in 10 years based on that $20,000 investment. Now let's check out the savings account. Now when you do a savings account, you don't get quite as much interest. So she's going to get 1.4% compounded monthly, but she's going to leave it in there 30 years. So let's check out this one. So $20,000 and 1.4%. So you got to move that over 2. This is going to look a little weird. 0.014. Now compounded monthly is 12. So 12 times a year times 30 years. Again, we put all that in our calculator. Again, we still get around 30,000. We get a little bit more, $30,431.78. Okay. The last option is a mutual fund. So mutual funds are like when you kind of invest in some stocks, maybe that are together. So 8.3% compounded quarterly for 5 years. So let's check this one out. So again, her $20,000 investment and 8% or 8.3 would be 0.083. Quarterly is 4. So we put 4 in both spots for 5 years. And we do this one and we get still around 30,000, but a little less. Okay. So the question becomes, what do you think is the best option? There's not really a right or wrong answer here. They all are pretty similar. I guess one of the big differences, though, is the time frame. Like the first one, you have to wait 10 years. The second one, you have to wait 30. But this one, you only have to wait 5 years. Again, there's no real right or wrong answer, but I would probably pick the mutual fund because I'm going to make about the same amount of money, but it's only going to take me 5 years to do that. So that's our compound interest formula, and it's pretty easy. You just have to know what number goes where. You set it up and you use your calculator.